Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another edition of NHL Trade Talk Now, a special edition, a special pre-draft Seattle expansion draft edition of the NHL Trade Talk, the podcast. We're going to put it on the podcast. We got a special guest with us, Julian Mongillo with the Hockey Raiders is with us. Julian, how are you?
I'm good. I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on for the first time here.
Yeah,
It's crazy. All these rumors swirling around. You just can't get enough of all this stuff.
yeah, it's a busy time, and we haven't done a podcast in a little while. So I figured, you know what, we got to get on this. And you and I have been trying to get organized and together to
Yeah.
do this for a while, and it just we've been so busy writing and covering, and you cover a lot of Toronto Maple Leaf stuff. So as always, center of the hockey universe, Toronto is really busy. I cover the Oilers and all the rumors for the Hockey Raiders, and then plus the NHL Trade Talk website, which I'm running on a daily basis. So I have been extremely busy as well. So finding time where we could sneak this in late at night on a what is it,
Yep.
Tuesday?
Tuesday night.
You
Yep.
know, so people, we might get this released tonight, and if it is, less than 24 hours before the draft. I don't know where you want to start. Maybe I'll let you decide. There's so much to talk about, so many news, rumors, the draft, all this stuff just float. It's just so busy. Where do you want to start?
I think we should start off with the Carey Price stuff just because that's probably the biggest the news source right now. And
Okay.
the stories just, you know, gain steam. There's a lot of layers to it for sure. I mean, you break it down as far as, it happens where he becomes exposed, and then there's all this injury news and all that stuff coming out, and he's got to meet with doctors, but and then Seattle gives the ownership gives Francis their green light on that, and so there's a lot to develop here and a lot to break down. So I'm of the side that they kind of have to do this. I
They
don't know
as in
why
Seattle, or
Seattle does have to take Price here. I just think that these goalies don't grow on trees. We've seen Vegas find success taking a Marc Andre Fleury and giving them that stability and goal, that trustworthy backstop when everything else fails. There is obviously those injury history and that mega cap hit of 10.5 mil, but I think that's stuff that can all disappear if it develops in a certain way. So if he does hit the LTIR, I mean, you can get that cap space regardless if he is selected, and you can even go the trade route and he'd have to waive his move no move clause. But I think it's possible that they retain salary and can send him elsewhere. If not, I mean, you have a bona fide starting goalie and that you can rely on. And if they are doing what they're doing with Dreger and selecting him and signing him, that's a good 1A, 1B combo.
okay. So I have a question for you, and I don't know the answer to this, and I'm very curious to find out exactly where this is going to go in the next couple months here. But are you of the belief that this injury stuff? I'm sure there are injuries. Obviously, Carey Price is not playing at 100%. But the timing of all of this and the way that everything fell down, where do you sit on this stuff? Are you of the belief that this isn't as bad as Montreal wants us all to think that it is, that Carey Price wants us? Like, I don't even know what Carey Price is thinking. I have no idea if he wants to stay in Montreal. I have no idea if he wants to go to Seattle. He's got some roots there. It makes sense. If there's any other team outside of Montreal that he might seem to fit with, it's the Seattle Kraken, just based on where he hangs out in the offseason and his ties before the NHL. I don't know if he's legitimately like super hurt. Like nobody's been able to say like how much time he's planning on missing, if he needs surgery, if he doesn't need surgery. These doctor's appointments are happening right as Seattle needs to make this pick. Where do you sit on this? Are you thinking that this is legit on the up and up? Everything with Carey Price is the way that it sounds, and it is like a serious thing, or is it not?
I mean, I don't think it's all happening by chance. I mean, I think there's some sort of process or maneuver that's going on behind the scenes and some discussions with the league, maybe with Seattle and Bergevin. And so I think that there is some sort of dramatic aspect to it where they're playing up this whole situation just to maybe drive up viewership and make a bigger deal out of this whole expansion draft thing. But I think that I'm not sure what Carey Price is thinking in his own head, but we've discussed before that we think that he was the one who, I guess, proposed this idea just so they could protect Jake Allen instead of him, and hopefully Seattle's too scared to take on his contract and his injury concerns. But I don't know. I don't know really what to make of it. I just think that it's too much of a, I guess, an asset to pass up at this point.
Well, it's certainly not black and white. And for those people that haven't been keeping up on this whole situation, haven't read some of the articles on NHLTradeTalk.com, basically what we've found here, or we've read or discovered as the story has been unfolding here, is that it wasn't Montreal who decided that they were just going to simply expose Carey Price. It was Carey Price who came to the Montreal Canadiens and GM Marc Bergevin and said, look, I know you're going to lose Jake Allen. If you leave him unprotected, he's gone. Like, it's just a given. Seattle's going to be interested in him. So Bergevin was trying to trade Jake Allen because he knew that too. He knew he was going to lose the goalie. Carey Price said, look, there's a lot going on with me. I've got a really expensive contract. I don't even know if they'll take me to get that price. I've got some injury issues. I got to go get checked out. I just don't know that Seattle's going to do this, but they will take Jake Allen. So leave me unprotected. And Montreal didn't want to do it. Bergevin was like, nope, I'm not going there. Until he couldn't get the return he wanted for Jake Allen because nobody was willing to pay that price. So they said, okay, well, we'll fall back at plan B and we'll take a risk here. Now, I don't know if Montreal is thinking that this is a real risk, if they're super confident that Seattle's not going to bite on this, or if they do, if they even care. Like, I think Montreal would be emotionally like, that sucks. Like, we just lost the face of our franchise. Carey Price is a big deal. But there's also that side of the coin where Carey Price can be awesome, and he showed it in the playoffs, and then he can not be so awesome, which he showed in the regular season. So that's a lot of money. Well, to think
what they can do with that cap space, right? I mean, they have a lot of holes to fill, right? So
it's a lot of money.
Philip Deneau doesn't come back, and there's ways that they could use that money. That's no doubt. They would need another goalie for sure, but I don't know. It's difficult because there is a lot of goaltenders available to the Kraken to select. They got some big names out there still. Ben Bishop, they reportedly have the interest in Driedger. So, I mean, if they're going to do that, there's even Capo Kakinen. I don't know if there's a side deal that might go on with the Wild there in order to keep him. But
Seattle takes him probably.
Oh, I would think they would have to. It's just odd that why would Minnesota not protect their younger goalie there,
It is a little bit of a question as to why they went with Ket Talbot instead.
Yeah. So that kind of caught me off guard. That was one of the bigger ones that I had seen that caught my eye. But, I would definitely take Kakinen. And if that's the case, like, you could afford to take Kakinen, Driedger, and then take a risk on Price. I mean,
it's just a really big risk to miss on. That's what Montreal's gambling here, right? Like, that Seattle doesn't want to miss on this, right? It's missing for the face of the franchise, missing for jersey sales, missing for that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of miss than missing on the ice where he might not be what you think he's going to be, and you've got 5 more years left on this deal. I think what Montreal's gambling here.
I think if you have Kakinen and Driedger as your other options, I wouldn't be opposed to I think that's a decent duo to start a team with. And then have Price sitting there in the background. If it works out, it works out. And I don't know. I think that they'll be okay to roll with that.
Do you have any idea what the order of the draft is? Like, do they go alphabetically? Do they go by standings? Like,
I would assume it'd be going by alphabetical order.
It'd be very interesting if they got to choose who they selected first, because if they picked Carey Price right off the bat, Seattle's going for it. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, they're all in. If they're taking Carey Price, they are saying to themselves, we are a playoff team. We are going to be the Vegas of this year, and we're going for it. And if they don't,
I hope they do that.
Well, yeah, it's way better hockey, right? Like, I don't know that Seattle's going to take the same approach and think that they're going to be, I don't know if Vegas thought that right out of the gate. They were more the underdog that said, no, we're not as much of an underdog as you think. But I don't know if Seattle, they're going to have a good team. Like, there's just, depending on what they choose to do, there's a lot available to them that they could have a very competitive team if they wanted to. It's just a question of whether or not they want to. Are they building immediately? Are they going to put a roster together that contends tomorrow? Or are they building and picking players that they think they can either flip and get more draft picks, or they're getting younger guys that they think will turn into something like Vince Dunn in St. Louis or whatever? Like, are they picking guys that they think, okay, this is the team that we want to have as kind of our core, turns into our leadership, and then in 2 or 3 years we're better, like the old expansion teams, right? Like, Vegas was such a different deal, and it threw a wrench into this whole equation that you don't even know now what Seattle's thinking, right? Like, what's Ron Francis, what's his strategy? Like, we don't know what they want to do. What's your hunch, though? You're saying you would take a flyer on it. Do you think they do?
I think it's too hard to pass up just the face of the franchise opportunity, and I don't know. I think for some reason, let the cap work itself out later. I mean, there's a lot of good options I think that they can select in order to make all this work together. And if they do that based on price and goal, and if it doesn't work out, they have that cap space. I don't think they're missing out on too much if they do take Price and it doesn't work out in terms of what they're missing out on and what's unprotected otherwise on the Canadians. It's Drouin who also has that long-term injury or issue, whatever's going on with him. And Paul Byron's probably the only other option at 3.4 million, 32 years old for another few years. So I don't know. That's probably the only two things that stick out to me, but I don't think they're missing out on much if they do take Carey Price and
Yeah,
it doesn't work out.
I'm not sure they're going to take him. I think that we're hearing a lot about it, and I think it's a fun story, and I just don't know that they pull the trigger on it, but I sure would love it. Like, I think it would be fantastic if they did it, because the dominoes that would fall would be great. Because if you're going to miss in Seattle, you have Dreger and you have Carey Price and whoever else they grab as a third goalie, because they can get a decent goalie for a third string spot.
Easily.
You could probably not hit as well on your forwards and your defense because you know you've got two or three of the best goalies in the
Yeah.
NHL to save you some games, which is hugely important when you're building a team, right? The goaltending defense out is what they say, goal out. Like that's where you want to go. So if you're building the strongest goalie tandem you can, then that's a pretty good place to start. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about another player who we don't know if Seattle's going to pick, but is available to them. Similar situation, really high cap hit, older player, has been fantastic in the past, but there's some injury issues with this player. We don't know what he's going to be like. He could return and be fantastic, and he could return and be a total dud for 2 years. But Vladimir Tarasenko is certainly not wanted in St. Louis. He does not want to stay in St. Louis. They have left him exposed, so they did not protect him. So they don't trade him later, whatever. They're willing to lose him for free. If you're Seattle, do you take Tarasenko or do you look at another player from St. Louis? Because there's some decent options out of St. Louis, and I think one of the reasons they chose not to protect Tarasenko is to maybe say, don't take this guy, take him.
Yeah. I think I mean, if it was me, I would probably take him just because he is a proven 30 goal potential 40 goal scorer in the NHL. And we've seen it multiple seasons. I think he has 4 goal seasons or more. The injury is there again. But I mean, there's risks involved, but I mean, you got to make your calculated risks at this point. And Vince Dunn is available there too, but I think there is a lot of depth on defense that they can even select in the draft. It's pretty deep. So I would, again, it's hard to find those proven goal scorers in the league. And when they be just falling in your lap, like they are for Seattle, with Tarasenko, I think it's hard to avoid that. So if it was me, I would take him. And then take my chances elsewhere on defense and whatnot. But I don't know. What do you think?
I think there's a chance they take him, but there's so much talk about them not keeping him and flipping him. I don't know how realistic that is, because of the options in Vince Dunn or Jaden Schwartz. If you take Jaden Schwartz, obviously a free agent, so then he becomes a selection out of St. Louis, and you don't get the other player. And you could just sign Jaden Schwartz later, I suppose, and
Yeah,
you get
exactly.
two guys out of St. Louis. But there are teams reaching out, from what I've read and heard, that are trying to convince Seattle to take Tarasenko because they want Tarasenko. They just don't want $7.5 million in Tarasenko. So Seattle's got the cap space to work with here and saying, okay, you take him, we'll give you this, you retain some salary, we get Tarasenko at a cheaper rate, whether it's 4.5, 5.5, 6, I don't know what they're thinking. But I don't know that happens because you're gonna really if the prices of what Seattle was setting for the market are anywhere close to accurate from what people were saying, it was costing a bundle to get them to do a side deal with you, like first picks, prospects, all that stuff. I don't know what it would cost you to convince them to overlook somebody, take Tarasenko, a guy they don't want, simply to retain some salary and flip them to you for a lower price. Like I don't know what you're gonna have to get or give Seattle to do that. But I'm intrigued by how much talk there is about this and that this seems to be a viable option for somebody. Philadelphia was rumored to be in on this, but then backed away. I guess somebody in Philly's like, no, we're not doing that. So I'm curious to see where it goes, but he could be very good.
No, for sure. I think at the end of the day, like, whether it's Dunn or Tarasenko, I think that Tarasenko, there's no chance that he's going to remain there. So whether he ain't going to be there to start the season, that's for sure. I'll put money on that right now, but he's not going to be there. And at this point, if Seattle can get creative here, they hold a lot of cards. And if they want to get creative, and even if the price is rumored to be the first rounder or whatever they were saying to make side deals, I think that they could even take a step back off of that and make some other decent deals. Like Tampa Bay is a team that I would watch to make some sort of deal there for sure. Cal Foote is rumored to be RFA, but I think he could be a potential piece if they make them take Tyler Johnson, let's say. So there's a lot of layers there too. So if I was Seattle, I wouldn't be too set on holding that first round pick to make a side deal. I think there is opportunity to make those deals otherwise and flip players here and there. And there is guys like Van Riemsdyk who, if you're looking for a sniper or a goal scorer and carries the same similar cap hit, and you want to take Tarasenko and flip him for more assets, it's always a possibility.
Speaking of the draft, but not necessarily the selections that we're going to see here on Wednesday, are there any players that you think have been sitting to the side, Taylor Halls of the world, Adam Larsons of the world, free agents that we're just kind of waiting? We've heard a lot about them. Maybe they'll test the market. Maybe they'll sign. Maybe these deals are sort of in the bag. Alex Ovechkin, stuff like that. Anybody that you think Seattle might have on their radar, like a Gabriel Landeskog, for example. I heard they talked to his camp, but didn't make an offer. They had one real brief conversation and then never really went anywhere. So he's either going to hit the market or he's going to go back to Colorado. Anybody you think we should be watching in that respect? Somebody that is potentially a free agent that could set. We know Dreger's one of them. Anybody else that Seattle might say, you know what? Don't worry about your guy on that roster. We're going to get your free agent. We'll talk about him. That's our pick for your team. Anybody we should watch in that respect?
I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but someone who went on the back burner is Dougie Hamilton. There was a bunch of he was a hot topic before this all Seattle started. All these expansion protection lists came out and stuff. So I think he kind of faded away into the woodwork, and that could be a possibility. I think if Seattle's looking at a guy like that, and like you said already, Landeskog too. I think that there's a serious chance that does happen because they can fit that cap space in, and Colorado's just too tight right now. They have a lot of work to do in their lineup, and including Cale Makar. And I think they have just over $25 million to do it, but they have a lot of holes to fill still. I think they only have like 4 or 5 defensemen on their roster right now, so they have a lot of work to do. So I don't know if they will be able to fit Landeskog in there. And I think that not too many teams, unless the St. Louis Blues emerge and as a potential player, which I think they are, especially if they lose Tarasenko, to use Landeskog as a replacement.
Well, St. Louis will certainly be in on Landeskog if he hits the market. I can guarantee that one. The number that I'm hearing is Colorado's offered $40 million, 5 times 8, and there's $60 million out there on the market for Landeskog. Some team is going to give him $60 million over 8 years. So that's $20 million he's potentially leaving on the table by saying, okay, well, I'll stick with Colorado. Like, I'm assuming the Avalanche will have to come up, but like you mentioned, you got a lot of things you got to do in Colorado. You got Nathan McKinnon. You need a goaltender. You got Cale Makar, who might make as much as $10 million a season. Like, that wouldn't shock me at all.
Just cashed in and
8.5 times 8, right?
He's a great player, but Cale Makar is a step above to me, so he's going to command more than that for sure.
Yeah, no, and I don't know. I don't get any sense from the Colorado side of things or Makar side of things, not that we are a fly on the wall in those conversations, but I'm not sure that he's keen on doing a bridge deal. I think that he and the Colorado are like, look, if we do 8 years, let's do 8 years, right? And a guy who's not in that situation, and we'll switch gears again, Kirill Kaprizov out of Minnesota. There's all sorts to talk about this dude. So he's apparently got a serious offer on the table in the KHL. CSK Moscow has said, I don't know what the number is, but like a serious, legitimate offer. It's not just posturing. It's not just positioning. It's not Kaprizov and his agent saying, yeah, well, we could just go there, so you need to up your money. Like, it's a legit offer. And Minnesota has offered 8 years. I don't know what the money is necessarily, but he's turned it down. So it could be as much as 8 times 8, and he said no. But he wants 3 years. So he wants to have the smallest window possible because he believes in 3 years he's going to be among the best players in the NHL, and he's going to be worth $9.5, 10, $11 million a season. Or he's wanting to bolt, and he's going to want to go play with somebody like the Rangers and Artemi Panarin, who's a really good friend of his. So Minnesota's like super not wanting to do this. They are just like, no. The longer the term, the better. They want to lock him in so that he can't take off. He's a little bit older, so he gets, some situation. Like, what are you making of this? Like, do you think it's legitimately a concern that he could jump to the KHL, or is he just like, I'm not really going anywhere, but it's an option for me, so do what I want, or I'm, potentially going to leave.
Yeah, you caught me off guard with this off the air, and I didn't even hear about any of this going on. So my first instinct is what you're saying is, that like for him to turn down that much money, or that, I mean, guess not money, but term, is that's pretty significant. But I understand where he's coming from, because he probably thinks the cap is going to go up eventually, with all this revenue coming
Well, if he
back.
does 3 years, that's when they're ballparking it, right? About 3 years from
Exactly,
now.
right? So I understand it from a whole agent financial point of view for sure. But that thing with the offer from Moscow is interesting, because with Russian players, they always like to go back home and end their careers there, or at least go back. They're just, the familiarity is something that it's not the same in North America for them. So for me, I'm always contingent, or I'm always, a little worried about those Russian players wanting to go back. And it wouldn't surprise me if a guy like Kaprizov would want to do that. So I understand why Guerin wants to lock him in for sure for as long as they can, just cap certainty, and just make sure he sticks around. To They finally have a star player, and they've been craving one for how long now, since they've had a guy of this caliber. So it's interesting, but I think, maybe they settle, even if it is a 3-year bridge deal. I mean, we've seen those go around the league a lot now. So it wouldn't surprise me if it ends up being that short.
I would guess that they're not going to do that. I'm going to think Garen holds firm. I think he's going to call Kaprizov's bluff here. We talk about the Olympics. We don't know what's happening with that, but we've seen Ovechkin and how serious he was about wanting to play for Russia and threatening to leave the NHL if it didn't happen. But he didn't do that, right? He never did. They always worked out the
Yeah.
Olympic stuff, and they usually tend to do that. So I don't think that's going to play a huge role. I don't know that guys that say, I can always go play in Russia are really serious. Like we saw Kovalchuk do it, but that's pretty rare. Like it's not like it's something that happens a lot. I think this kid wants to stay in the NHL. I think he knows that his bread is going to be buttered in the NHL. That he's going to be on a higher echelon of hockey player if he stays in the
Yeah,
NHL.
for
And he
sure.
does. I mean, he won the Calder without a 99
Yeah.
out of 100 votes, right? Like it
Yeah.
wasn't even close. I'm not sure who the idiot was that didn't vote for him, but it's just like it was pretty obvious that he was the guy. I just don't think that Guerin's going to give him 3 because I think you walk him right out of the
No.
door. And so 5 makes sense for me. And even then, Kaprizov still gets what he wants, right? He's going to lock in for good money. And then in 5 years,
He'll be in his prime and cash
he's
in
going to hit
again.
a home run, right? He's going
Yeah.
to hit as long as he's as good as he thinks he is, he's going to hit a financial home run. It's not going to be an issue. I do have a question though about Minnesota sticking with this team because we heard today, and I don't know if you got this news too. Jack Eichel, there's still lots of talk. He's sort of kind of twiddling into the background here with all this expansion draft
Another one.
conversation stuff. But Minnesota's in on this dude, and so are the Rangers apparently. But Anaheim's dropped out, Calgary's dropped out, Los Angeles has dropped out. But it looks like Minnesota and New York. How does Minnesota do this? Like, if they're going to do, they just gave Eriksson Ek that money. They're thinking about giving Kaprizov that money. They just bought out Ryan Suter and Zach Parise. So they have money this season and next, but they
Yeah,
won't.
but
Like, they got 15
yeah.
million in 4 years or something. 15 million
In
in
dead
dead
cap.
cap space. Like, how
Yeah.
do you give a guy like Eichel $10 million for the next however many years he's locked into that situation and still have the money for Kaprizov? I love the idea of Kaprizov and Eichel. Like, who
Yeah.
doesn't like that idea? Do you think Minnesota's realistically in this?
I mean, they should be, because that's a franchise generational player. I guess that would be, franchise altering, and probably help Kaprizov stay around longer if they do get a guy like that. Um, I just don't even see how the money does work out in the end with that dead cap space. I think it's too much to overcome, and I understand why Guerin did it, because he's got to do it now or else it's not going to happen. So he had to move them now, but I don't think it gives them much room to make a play like that on someone long term. And the other thing is like I don't even know what a deal would look like potentially.
Well,
I'm not
Buffalo's still
sure.
asking for like 4 assets, if that's what you
You know
mean.
what I mean? That's what I
Yeah.
mean. And I'm sure like the Kings dropped out because I think they were asking for Byfield, which is, that's
Like a
kind of,
non-starter.
yeah, that's not happening. So I'm kind of wondering, like, I know they have Kalen Addison, another, that blue liner, and as a prospect there. And I think they have another young blue liner, but
It's going to
I would
cost you
think,
something for sure.
yeah, for sure. And that's fine. But like, are those guys on the same stage as Byfield? Like, if that's what the ask from LA, like, what could they possibly want from Minnesota? You know what I mean? And would you be able to pay that price? I don't know. I'm sure they would need multiple first rounders as well if those prospects don't meet what Byfield is, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think at the end of the day it's going to work out. I think the fit is there, but I just don't think that the money and the trade would work out in the end.
I don't think Buffalo's going to get what they want. Like, they have never won a trade ever. Like, that's just a given. And they never get what they ask. Like, look at what Taylor Hall went for, right? Like, they just don't. And people are dropping like flies when it comes to Eichel, right? It's too expensive. You don't know what his injury situation is.
It's almost like they're
be.
the kid brother that everybody just keeps pushing aside.
Yeah, you don't really want that.
Yeah,
we'll give you
come
this.
On.
Like, it's
yeah,
not,
exactly.
You say
right?
you want it, but you don't really want it. You'll be okay with it. That's just the way the Buffalo seems to work. Let's talk about a couple other players here that might be hitting free agency. We heard, and this is not true for anybody who heard this story today, Seattle Kraken have not signed Philip Deneau. This has not happened. There was a rumor today that had been done 8 years times $5.8 million, and it was shot down rather quickly by a couple of very reputable sources. But it does lead me to the question, what happens with Philip Deneau? Like, is he coming back to Montreal? Is he going to hit free agency? Will he get that kind of money from somebody?
I think he'll get the money because I think there's enough desperate teams that need that defensive centerman. I think that they'll be able to find a fit somewhere else. I just don't think that that's going to be in Montreal, obviously. But if Montreal does have that room to play with cap space that they're going to be taking on, if either Carey Price gets taken by Seattle or he gets LTIR'd, and even the Weber LTIR is going to play into this too. I mean, they do have to replace Weber on the back end, but they have $7 million to find a replacement and could use whatever's excess to go find someone else on top of it. So
I heard they're kicking tires on Rasmus Ristolainen out of Buffalo.
Yeah, that could be a potential fit.
I don't think he's their priority, but
that's not as like for me, I think you need a guy who could run the power play. I mean, Petrie could do it, but I think you maybe look at a guy like Dougie Hamilton could be available too, and a potential free agent for them to sign. I think that could be a good fit.
You think Dougie wants to go to a big market?
I'm not sure. He's played in a few of them already, so I don't know if he's going to.
And he played decent in Boston, but he seems to, and he's in a big market at Calgary.
But even in Calgary, right? Yeah.
Like, a lot of following, right? People passionate about that team.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think he's kind of fed up with it. So I don't know if he would want to go to Montreal. I think it's a fit for Montreal, maybe not as much for the player.
I think I legitimately think he's the kind of player that's going to matter.
Yeah, I agree. And it's like almost the Jake Gardner situation, which big market. He goes to Carolina. Nobody really cares about him. Even what he's getting paid now, nobody seems to care that he's still on the roster. Yeah. If it was Toronto, they'd be calling for his head. So, and they did. And that's what moved him out. But, I don't even know where we were talking about here, but I guess Philip Deneau. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't think that it's going to be in Montreal. I think he'll get that somewhere. Yeah, I think anything he could probably command upwards of $5 million, and someone will pay him that.
I'm very curious what that money's going to look like.
Yeah,
like for whatever reason, Montreal has decided that he is not worth a penny more than $5 million. Like, that's just Bergevin seemed to have decided that. That's what the offer apparently was, 6 times 5, and he turned it down. I don't know if the Bergevin's just pissed about that now and doesn't want to do that deal again, and he's thinking it's too much. You can come back to me when you're ready to talk a reasonable number. But then there's all these people out there talking about how he's going to get more than that, and then there are teams that are willing to do that. Like, we've heard in a flat cap market that there are some players who are going to get more than they think. Adam Larson, maybe 5 times 5. He's not probably worth that. Deneau, if he gets $6 million, I don't know. Is he worth that? Like, there's going to be a lot of interesting stories, and Deneau's one of those guys that I don't know what that number is going to look like. It's going to be very curious to see if he chooses to go somewhere and he signs for a much more reasonable deal than we all think, like a Tyler Toffoli type of contract, or if he's going to wait and go, no, I want my money. Like, I specifically said no to Montreal on purpose, and I'm going to get my money, and somebody's going to give it to me. And is it like Columbus? They're going to be desperate, right?
Yeah, for sure. But the thing with them not signing Deneau is there is like nobody, I think, on the free agent market that would be able to match what he does or gives to that team. So they're going to have to go and find that in a trade, I think. Yeah. Like, I'm looking at some of these names, Getzlaf, Krejci, Stepan, Stastny. Like, I don't see any of those as potential fits as Deneau replacements in terms of defensive reliability and what he brings. I mean,
there's some
there.
guys, but not that are going to give you maybe the same level of offense, right? Because
Deneau's
that guy who can play you and he only didn't give you the offense in Montreal because he wasn't asked to, right? You had
and Suzuki are going to have to carry that load now, offensively for sure. But I mean, I guess you could say Stats, and he could be a decent option there if you're looking for a cheaper guy to do the
He'll
job.
probably stay in Winnipeg, but I
But
don't know.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, you're a Toronto guy, so let's talk about this video that leaked today. So Kevin Weeks is in a Seattle fish market. He's doing some sort of test footage or something. I don't know. But so the dude throws the fish. The Seattle, if you've ever been to these Seattle fish markets, they're notorious for the fish going flying across the room. He catches it, they scream and yell. Everybody, it's a big
yeah,
show. Everybody loves it. So they're filming footage for whatever they're filming, and this video leaks that the announcement was that the Seattle Kraken have selected Alexander Kerfoot from Toronto. That we probably assume he's going to be their guy. It's either him or Jared McCann. That's got to be the deal, right?
yeah.
But do you think this video has anything to do at all with the actual expansion draft, or is this just like footage that was being filmed by NBC and Kevin Weeks and is test something here or there? They're just doing random stuff, and we only saw one of maybe 5 or 6 different takes with different players. Like, do you think this was related to the draft, or do you think that this is just random footage that telephone tagging
Yeah.
just blew up and everybody's like, oh my God, they've already announced Alexander Kerfoot and that's the video we're going to see tomorrow. Because they're going to do some cool stuff. We've heard celebrities are coming in. They've got really
Yeah.
weird ways of announcing these draft picks and stuff. What do you make of this video?
Well, I'm excited to see the production that they could put on tomorrow, or I guess today when if you're listening to it on the day of the draft. But I think that they can do some cool things with it, and hopefully the actual event goes well. But in terms of the video, I think there is some validity to it. I mean, it's not like you set up a whole production, and it looked like there was a pretty legit setup with some
Yeah,
lights.
they had
And
some lights.
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It looks like it was there for a purpose. So I don't know if they were doing multiple guys. Maybe they're just screaming out Dermott, McCann, and Kerfoot.
Yeah.
Scream out all the potential guys, and we'll see which one they pick. But I would think that there's some sort of validity to it at the end of the day. I mean, I think Kerfoot has been rumored to be their guy, or the guy they're taking from Toronto, at least for a while. I mean, the McCann situation emerging might have changed that. And I think that if they are looking to save some money, McCann can do a similar job as Kerfoot, maybe not as reliable defensively. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's going to be Kerfoot. I don't know if that's going to be just coincidence. But for Kevin Weeks to do something like that, and it looked like a pretty legit production, so I'm going to go ahead and say that it was all for a reason.
It certainly could be. I'm going to suggest, just because of the nature of the draft and how many things could change all the way leading up to when they actually make the pick, that it probably wasn't, that it was probably NBC just sort of testing out the footage and seeing if this is going to be a gong show and actually work. Like, can we get this fish to fly across the screen? Can we make it look cooler? Or are we going to have to abandon this whole shot idea? Somebody, a cinematographer, is looking at this thing going, is this going to work? Like, let's try this out, right? Like,
fit this in the frame.
It certainly could have been that.
Can you catch the fish? And should we use a squid?
Yeah, like, we have this fantastic creative idea. Is this going to be a total bust? Are we going to look like idiots for trying this or whatever? Like, that could be what this is, right? The Jared McCann stuff is interesting. I think that trade was done specifically to make Seattle choose one or the other. Like, I think,
well, the Leafs are going to take whichever, either.
yeah,
or,
like,
right?
I
They'll
think
be okay with that.
I think Seattle wanted both those guys. I think they wanted Kerfoot, and they were going to take McCann from Pittsburgh. And I think Kyle Dubas knew it, and he knew he was going to lose Kerfoot, so he's like, well, okay, screw you then. I'll take McCann. You got to pick one. I get the other guy, right?
Yeah.
So if you take
and
Kerfoot,
they didn't pay much
McCann.
for him, so
yeah,
they didn't pay much for him.
smart.
So I think it was a great deal for them. Yeah. And I'm a Toronto fan. I posted up in Ontario, so we're I'm happy with that deal. I like it a lot, and hopefully it pays off.
Where there's some people in Toronto that seem to be all worked up about the fact that they just traded for McCann and left him exposed. But I don't think those people quite understood why they made that trade in the first place.
Yeah, it's either or, and I think they're just caught up on the number that Kerfoot's costing them at the end of the day. And I mean, we're a little cap crunch, we have for sure, and every cent counts right now. So I could see why they're a little bit hesitant on that, but it is what it is at the end.
All right. So I'm going to give you I'm going to leave the floor open to you. Last topic. Anything that you want to talk about before we close things off? Is there anything that's weighing on you, or that you're thinking about going to the expansion draft, or a player that you're specifically watching?
I think that I'll just say that I really think that Seattle needs to go after the center depth, and make sure that if they're going to build their team as a contender, to make sure that's a solid base to build around. And I think there's a lot of goaltenders available that they'll be able to be okay in that position, even if they don't have Price, especially with Driedger as a good start, if that's looks like it's going to happen. So for me, I think that the best way for them to go about it would be to start off with one of Johansson or Duchesne, Yanni Gord from Tampa Bay, and then Alex Kerfoot or McCann, either or again, as their third line center and build down the middle. We've seen Vegas struggle to find that center and make some noise in the playoffs because of that lack of depth there. And I think that, Johansson, I have hopes that he can bounce back in a new situation, new scenery. And I think that he's the better of the two to pick between Duchesne and Johansson.
Was Johansson 8x8? Is that what he was?
I think he's 8x8, but I think he's done in 2024, 25. That's what.
Does that cap hit not worry you if you're Seattle?
It does. It's a little bit worrisome at the end of the day, but I think that the going rate is there's no centers available anymore. So I think to take a chance on a guy like that, especially because you can save that cap space in other areas, that I'd be okay with doing it.
Yeah, I suppose if you're gonna blow your money, blow it down the middle.
Yeah, and hope for the best. I think Gord is going to be the guy from Tampa, though.
You think Seattle's going to take? Okay, I'll stick with your thing, and what a thing I'm curious about. Not only the goaltending, we'll see what happens with Carey Price, but there's a lot of high ticket defensemen available. Like PK Subban, Mark Giordano, some big names with big tickets. Do you think Seattle takes any of those guys?
I don't see them taking Subban, but I think Giordano is going to be a lock almost for them, just because he's a 1 year deal at 6.5. You can eat that for 1 year.
Yeah.
Right. And I think he can bring a lot of what Derek Engelland brought to Vegas in terms of leadership and accountability and stuff like that, and all the intangibles. So if they are planning to take a couple of the younger guys, especially on the blue line, Giordano would be a great guy to have to bring them along. And then they could probably get him on a cheaper contract moving forward, to keep him in Seattle, I think too.
Yeah. As he winds down, if he wants to finish it in Seattle, that's a good place to do it.
Yeah, I think that's a lock for that one for sure.
Yeah. I'll be very curious to see. Oh, by the way, as we film this right now, the Milwaukee Bucks just won the NBA championship.
Oh, yes, they did.
Nice. Giannis scored 50 in the final game. Big. That team's going to be a contender for a long time. All right, we'll close it off there. Decent way, not NHL related, but a decent note to close the show on. Where can people find you? Because this is the first time you've been on our show, so let's let everybody know where you can reach you.
So I'm now writing for NHL Trade Talk and Rumors. So my expansion mock draft is actually just on the site now, so you can click that, look that up. And I'm on Twitter. My Twitter handle is just right there at Julian Mangilo. And you can also find me writing for the Hockey Writer.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and if we get the opportunity, we'll probably have to do a follow-up show based on what happens with the expansion draft. And, of course, this week is also the NHL entry draft. And then we're right around the corner from free agency. There's a lot that we're going to be covering.
Lots of buzz, lots of movement.
Yeah.
We're ready for lots of action.
Yeah, should be fun. All right, man. I appreciate you coming on here. Thank you. We'll chat with you soon. And for everybody else, another edition of NHL Trade Talk now. And we'll talk to you guys as soon as we got more content to talk about, which will be right away.
Cheers.
See you.